All right, let's get to it. Uh, Hello, everyone. For those that don't know it, my name is Russell from the Fallout from Dishonor podcast, and this is your AEW 2021 All Out review. I just gotta say, before I get into all the details and stuff, AEW put on an absolutely tremendous show. If you haven't watched this yet, I understand that this isn't the typical formula with the WWE network or WWE on Peacock or even Ring of Honor's Honor Club, where you pay a flat fee and you get, the company's entire catalog, and then you end up getting to stream their quote unquote pay-per-views for free. I say quote unquote. With WWE and Ring of Honor, they're not even really pay-per-views anymore. They're more like internet streaming specials. Just the way that the business has kind of changed and migrated over the last, I guess I'd say, decade or so. So I understand if you haven't seen this. That being said, if you haven't, I would encourage you to go out of your way to get a chance to watch this. Maybe you've got a friend that's ordered it. I ordered on Fight TV, and whenever you order an event off of Fight TV, you get unlimited replays. If you've got a friend that you can go over to their house and watch it, maybe you've got a way to order it afterwards. Maybe you couldn't afford it now and you can in like a week or something due to financial issues. I would go out of your way to watch this. I've never actually ordered an AEW pay-per-view before this. I haven't watched them live. I've watched some of the stuff after the fact. Compared to the stuff that I have seen, this was, by and large, maybe the best AEW show I have ever seen. For some people, that might be overblown. For others, maybe you agree. And for some people that absolutely hate AEW, that doesn't mean anything. If you're listening to this and you absolutely hate AEW, I don't even know what the hell you're doing listening to something like this with something you despise. I rag on AEW a lot, but I watch it because I do actually enjoy some of their stuff. Anyway, I'm babbling. So, the All Out pre-show, originally the Women's Casino Battle Royal was supposed to be on the pre-show. The Pac and Andrade match got bumped this past week. I think it was announced on Tuesday or Wednesday. Don't hold me to that. Maybe Wednesday or Thursday. Anyway, that's not important. The Casino Battle Royal got moved up onto the main show because of the singles match getting bumped. So this was basically kind of thrown together at the last minute. There have been some storylines going on between the teams involved, but it felt slapped together at the last minute because it was slapped together at the last minute. If you didn't watch the pre-show and you just watched the main card, or even if you didn't get a chance to watch any of this show, I told you I'd go out of your way to watch the show if you haven't. I wouldn't go out of my way to watch the pre-show. This was just mostly a typical AEW multi-man match. It was a little strange through most of it. It felt a little slow as far as an AEW multi-man match goes. AEW, some of their guys have a habit of trying to jam as many moves and spots as they possibly can into sometimes what's a very small amount of time. This felt like that just a little bit slower, which was kind of strange because it was on the pre-show. You would think they're just showing promo packages over and over again. I would think these guys would get a decent amount of time if they wanted it. Anyway, not really much notable here. There was kind of an interesting spot where a bunch of people from both teams grouped together, started putting standing submission holds, I should say. Most people were using a sleeper or a reverse chin lock. There was an ankle lock or two. I know at least one. Luchasaurus would end up coming in and just running through that and putting a stop to it. The match would end up ending with Jungle Boy getting a submission on Angelico with his snare trap. Not much to really get into. I assumed that the Best Friends and Jurassic Express would win it. It wouldn't make much sense to beat the Jurassic Express in particular, apart from their, I believe, most recent match with the Young Bucks. They've been positioned as a higher tier team, so I don't know why you would beat them in this, or that they would even be on the losing end of the match. So, getting past that, into the pay-per-view itself. Oh, you know what? Something I forgot. The Samoa Joe signed card I've been teasing giveaway on the Facebook page and on Twitter. We are going to have an announcement about that, how you can enter, here in a little bit, so stay tuned for that. First match, TNT Championship match, Miro versus Eddie Kingston. Right out of the gate, Miro would attempt his game over submission, his version of the camel clutch. Didn't get it synced in. Both end up on the outside. And Miro would pick Kingston up in a body slam position and post his back. And then he would roll him in and only get a 1 count. Kind of impressive on Kingston's end. Both men would eventually trade chops and punches and forearms back and forth. Eddie hit a back suplex. Miro dodged his reverse fist finisher. Miro and Kingston would end up in the corner. Miro would pick Eddie up and go to drag him out of the corner, which Kingston would grab a hold of the top turnbuckle and end up pulling the pad off. More on that later. Miro went for the game over again. Eddie managed to get to the ropes. Miro did kind of get it locked in. Eddie would then hit a DDT and go for the cover, and we had no referee. The way it was shot live, you wouldn't even know. The announcers called the ref. Apparently, after actually a couple of minutes, the ref picked up the turnbuckle pad and was trying to get the turnbuckle pad back on the exposed turnbuckle. I think he even yelled at some ring crew or some people on the outside. That would have been after he attempted to put the turnbuckle pad on. I don't actually remember seeing him do that the way it was shot. You wouldn't have even known what the hell he was doing if it wasn't for the announcers, be perfectly honest. But Eddie was left for an extended period of time on the cover with no referee. Eventually, the ref would notice it, get a 2 count. After that, Eddie would try to run Miro into the exposed turnbuckle, which the ref stepped in, put a stop to that. Due to the commotion that was kind of going on, Miro would hit a low blow on Kingston, hit 2 of his signature mule kicks, and Miro would end up with the 3 count. Not really super surprised at the finish of this match, for being perfectly honest. Now, I will say that Eddie basically coming out with what was almost a victory in this was really interesting to me. I'm kind of wondering if they're not going to continue this story. This was one of the matches that felt kind of slapped together in the last few weeks. If you'd have asked me a few weeks ago, like around the time that Miro had that defense against Fuego del Sol, I would have probably guessed that Sammy would end up getting the TNT Championship match and not Eddie Kingston. Maybe they'll drag this out for a little longer, maybe not. I do think that Sammy Guevara will end up eventually getting a TNT Championship match, and I actually wouldn't mind if they end up putting the belt on him, to be perfectly honest. Get some of those titles on your homegrown talent, which, all things being fair, aside from Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley, I guess you could call most of the champions they've had homegrown talent. Some people would, anyway. Some people consider everything homegrown talent, unless it's WWE. That's not really factually accurate, but okay, we're not going to get into that. That's a conversation for the podcast. Following match was Jon Moxley versus Satoshi Kojira. Apologize if I'm mispronouncing that last name. The two of the announcers actually were pronouncing it slightly different too. Satoshi, before the match, would go for what I would call Code of Honor, the handshake. If you watch Ring of Honor, you'd understand the reference. For his attempt at good sportsmanship, he would get a middle finger from Jon Moxley, which I thought was kind of funny. They'd trade chops and forearms back and forth. Satoshi would end up on the outside of the ring. Moxley hit a dive. Then a Russian leg sweeped him into the barricade. Satoshi's back and head would hit the barricade. Back inside, Moxley went Pete Dunne on Satoshi's ass, tearing at his fingers, bending them in different directions. I think Moxley might have even bit his fingers too. Don't quote me on that. There was a lot of biting in this pay-per-view. Got a bunch of fucking zombies wrestling. It was really interesting. Satoshi from there would go on an extended offense, which, while I'm thinking about it, Satoshi, if you're not super familiar with him, and I wasn't either, my New Japan knowledge, I would say, is somewhat spotty at best. I've read a lot about it. I've watched some matches. I'm not familiar with everyone. That said, for a 51-year-old, Satoshi is in really good shape and can wrestle really well. I mean, if we're comparing him to, say, Chris Jericho, who's actually, I believe, a year younger, which for someone who's 50 years old, Jericho's not that bad in the ring. He's definitely slowed down, but I don't wince every time someone hits a move on Jericho like I have been doing with The Undertaker for the last 6 or 7 years. Both men would end up on the top rope. Moxley bit Satoshi's forehead. Satoshi would retaliate in the same manner. Back on the ground, Satoshi blocked a paradigm shift and hit a brain buster for a very, very near 2 count. At the end of the match, Moxley would hit 2 paradigm shifts, one after the other, get the win. As far as this match goes, it was decent. It wasn't a standout on the card, and that's not a knock on it because there's some amazing matches. But if someone's going to bring up Jon Moxley's name after the pay-per-view, it's not going to have anything to do with this match. It's going to have to do with the aftermath, because after that, Miro Suzuki, his music hit. They waited a while to get him out on the stage, which I thought was a little strange. Timing issues backstage, maybe. Suzuki came out. Crowd went fucking ballistic. Got in the ring. Him and Moxley traded blows, and he hit his gotch pile driver. As far as the online internet wrestling community is concerned, when the storyline started where Moxley sent a ton of contracts to Japan, there was definitely some people online in some of the Facebook groups and some people on Twitter that were theorizing, who would end up facing Moxley. Suzuki was one of the names that was coming up a lot on the internet. I thought this was a little bit strange. A lot of people thought that Satoshi may have been the only person that they could get over here. Maybe he was already in the States. Travel's going to be really limited because of COVID from Japan. But obviously, Suzuki, at least now, is in the U.S., so it seems like you could have booked this match if you wanted to. Satoshi wasn't on AEW to prop this match up, so I don't really see why they wouldn't have had this match unless they actually want to try to build up something with Moxley and Suzuki. From all the hype I've read online, when we do eventually get this one-on-one match, it should be really good. They may have actually advertised it for a Dynamite here soon, which, with as hyped as some of the people online are, I think that's a mistake. Next match, Britt Baker, Chris Statlander. Statlander took control of this one pretty much right out of the gate. Britt Baker get to the floor. Statlander at one point attempted the boop. That was stopped. Baker tried her DMD taunt and was shut down by Statlander. Statlander actually forced Baker to boop herself, which I've commented before how I've liked Statlander since she came back. She's dropped some of the comedy stuff a little bit. This was definitely comedy, but it wasn't. So if a match starts, you haven't touched your opponent yet, and Chris Statlander is doing the boop thing right out of the gate, that's the kind of stuff that kind of takes me out of the program I'm watching on TV. I don't know. It just takes me out of it. That and stuff like Orange Cassidy's kicks. But this was a little bit different just because of her forcing her opponent to do it. Baker would get on offense. Statlander would hit the floor. Rebel and Hayter would wander over Statlander. Cassidy came over and shut that shit down real fast. Statlander got back into the ring, got curb stomped by Britt, back and forth. Baker hit a devastating looking DDT for a very close 2 count. Baker threw on her glove, would attempt, or no, at this point she didn't even attempt. She put on the glove, that was shut down, and then Baker would counter the Big Bang Theory with a roll-up and a close 2. Baker would drop Statlander and then head to the top rope. Statlander would clock her and then go up and position for a superplex. Now, there was a couple spots in this match that were, I don't know if awkward or even scary is the right word. Statlander has a habit of doing these impressive displays of strength, but when she does them, it looks like she's within a hair of dropping her opponent, and it definitely looked like the position that she picked Baker up, it was just weird. You would need to watch it. There was definitely a moment where I thought she wasn't going to get her up, and on the top rope, you drop your opponent on to the floor outside the ring, you could really hurt him. She would get the superplex. Statlander would go back up to the top, miss the 451. Baker attempted the lockjaw again, couldn't get it in. migrated to a crossface. Statlander rolled it through. Britt would end up in an electric chair position. Instead of hitting an electric chair on Baker, Statlander would just throw her off her shoulders and drop her on her face. Baker ended up outside. Statlander went for the pendulum moonsault, which she missed. Statlander would take a curb stomp after that on the floor. Referee would start counting. Cassidy came over and started screaming at her to motivate her to get her back in the ring, which was very strange seeing Cassidy actually put energy into something. She would get back in last possible second. After some more back and forth, Baker would hit Panama Sunrise, curb stomp, and get the lockjaw in. Statlander, you could say she passed out. I say she was out before this hold even got put on her. Following that, we got a interview with Alex Marvez, interviewing Andrade and Chavo Guerrero. This was another throwaway segment in a long line of throwaway segments involving Andrade. You guys already know he's impressive in the ring. I've not been impressed with any segment he has been involved in that didn't involve him in the ring since he debuted, which is unfortunate because he's only had one match against Max Sydal. It was only like 4 or 5 minutes, I believe. So after that, we got to the tag team steel cage match. I'm going to start this out by saying this match, there's absolutely no way I could have covered it all. There was just too much. Basically, almost right out of the gate, Bucks tried to scale the cage and leave, which I thought was strange. They were going by old NWA cage match rules, so escape wouldn't have meant anything unless you're just playing a chicken shit heel, which the Bucks as of late haven't really been playing chicken shit heels. They've been playing annoying, get the hell off my TV heels. After a while, Penta would end up getting trapped between the cage and the ring apron. If you didn't watch this, the cage that they used, so typically, I would say 99% of cage matches that I've ever seen is a cage that's constructed so when you either put it together or, in WWE's case, they lower it from the ceiling. When you get it into position, the bottom of the cage is resting on basically the side of the ring. This one, instead of that, went all the way to the floor. Imagine, if you will, a Hell in the Cell, but just without the area around it, and in this case, without a top. While Penta was trapped in that position, Nick basically tried to kick a field goal with Penta's head. Loud Young Bucks sucks chants after that. Phoenix did a step up off the cage, not the ropes, and hit an arm drag. Thrust kicks by the Lucha Bros. Young Bucks hit an assisted senton onto Penta. Dropkick senton combo. Matt pile drove Penta. Got a 2. Loud Lucha Bros chants. After a bit, the Bucks started ripping at the Lucha Bros masks, which garnered "fuck the Young Bucks" chants. Cutler would toss a leather shoe bag into the ring, and Matt Jackson would, of course, pull out the tack-covered shoe, bottom of it being covered in tacks. He went to super kick Phoenix. Penta stepped between them. Didn't do himself any favors. He ended up getting kicked in the face. At this point, they showed some close-ups of Penta's face, and the only reason we still don't know what he looks like is because of the face paint and the massive amount of blood that was covering his face. Penta and Matt hit stereo package pile drivers on the opposing teammate. I thought this was very strange. I think Matt picked Phoenix up first, and if I'm Penta, I think I would have tried to stop him from pile driving my partner. It just seemed odd to me. There was a couple things that I kind of pointed at this match and was like, what the hell? That was one of them. Phoenix ended up scaling the cage. Now, before that, I believe right before that, all four members started trading chops and super kicks in a very strange way. Say Penta hit a super kick on one of the Young Bucks, and then one of the Young Bucks would hit a super kick on Phoenix, and then Phoenix would hit the other, and they were positioned in a square in the ring, and it just kept going around and around and around, whatever offense they were getting. That spot right there was my major critique of this match. It annoyed the hell out of me. Phoenix would scale the cage. When he jumped off, he jumped on everyone, including Penta. There would be a double team spiked pile driver on Matt Jackson for the somewhat shocking win. I'd have to go back and listen to my predictions audio. I can't remember. I know I was torn with this match. My instincts wanted me to pick the Young Bucks. I wanted the Lucha Bros to win. I honestly didn't pick who I was picking in that match until I was recording, so I'd have to go back and listen. It was a shocking win, but a welcomed one. I'm glad that they got the tag titles off of the goddamn Young Bucks. I would love it if they took them off my TV a little bit more going forward. I don't know if I see that happening though. We'll see what happens. Next up was the Women's Casino Battle Royal. Now, originally when I was taking notes with this, I was taking notes as everyone was getting eliminated. I still have those. I missed a couple eliminations, and when I set up to record this, I looked at them and just thought to myself, this is not going to be interesting to listen to at all. So the couple things you need to know about this match. Well, if you've never seen a casino battle royal, they take the participants, they divide them. They end up dividing them into fours. Supposedly, the story for backstage is they all end up drawing cards, and everyone who drew a club came out first in this one, and then diamonds, can't remember, I believe hearts, and then spades, I believe. And then after that, there's, I think, 4-minute intervals in between the groups coming in, and then a few minutes after that, whoever the Joker card was assigned to comes out. And wouldn't you fucking know who won the pony, as a manager from Kentucky once said, Ruby Soho was your Joker card. After everyone else was thrown out, it came down to Ruby Soho and Thunder Rosa. I'm very happy to say that Ruby Soho won this match, so she will be getting a championship match in the future. I don't recall offhand. I don't believe there was any indication as to when she would be getting that match. I would not be against them putting the women's championship on her. I don't know that I really want them to take it off Baker just yet, but if we're being fair, if AEW has one major weakness. It's their women's division. Ruby Soho, formerly Ruby Riott, was not a huge star in WWE, but I think she has the potential. I've always actually liked her. I do remember reading some fan comments online, kept saying, why do you have this woman on your TV when you're not going to do anything with her? Why don't you just fire her? And then they did, and then there was a bunch of backlash. Typical fickle internet wrestling community. We're all guilty of it once in a while, even not the internet wrestling community, but the internet wrestling community is, by and large, much more guilty of it than a lot of other groups of people. So before I get to the next match, actually, I had told you guys that I was going to announce the details on the Samoa Joe signed card that I'm giving away. So I've been thinking about it, and here's what we're going to do. Here recently, I actually recorded my first interview with an independent wrestler, name of Adam Hayes. He goes by the moniker The Wrestling Nerd. Did a Skype recording where I'm going to be posting that video up on YouTube. I'm hoping to get it up on Wednesday. I should have it completely edited by the end of tomorrow and then just be able to post it. I might be posting a little preview clip maybe tomorrow. I haven't decided on that one just yet. Depends on the time that I have. But here's what I want from you guys. If you would like to win a signed Samoa Joe card, authentic NXT card, number 58 out of 99, all I want you to do, you don't need to share a tweet or like a tweet. You don't need to share the video. Although when I put the YouTube video up, I would encourage you guys to hit like if you like it. Feel free to share it, of course, just like with the podcast. But all I want from you guys is I've been trying to get some audience interaction since I started this podcast and haven't been very successful at that. So here's what I want from you guys. Go on YouTube and in the comments section, ask a question. It doesn't need to be related to the interview. I just want it to be related to wrestling, something I can pull and have like a Q&A section at the end of the main podcast and to answer your guys' questions. So go ahead, put your question down. As long as it's something not... If you put a question that's insulting and very trollish, I'm not going to enter you into the contest. But serious wrestling related question will get you into this. I haven't decided just yet when I'm going to do a cutoff. I'm thinking a couple weeks after the video drops. I'll just have a time frame. I'll announce that in the interview video. There will be a cutoff, and then I will take all of the names. There's plenty of randomizers and options online. I'll pick one of them that's fairly reliable, and I will be getting a hold of the winner. So, yeah, look for that interview with the Wrestling Nerd and comment your wrestling-related question, and you will be entered to win the signed Samoa Joe card. Moving on to the next match, MJF versus Chris Jericho. MJF came out, started with the old school Y2J countdown clock, which was hilarious. Jericho's entrance was a little weird. One of the members of his band that plays guitar was coming out, and as near as I could tell, was attempting to not play like the riffs or the chords in the song, but play the melody that Jericho sings in Judas. It was all right for the first little while, and then I'm not sure if it was the audio or if the guitar playing was just really sloppy, but it kind of turned into a mess. That on top of a bunch of fans trying to sing along with it and not really doing the best of jobs, probably partially because of the guitar playing and partially because just wrestling fans sometimes have a habit of not being able to do that very well. Match started. MJF, the spot where he wiped Chris Jericho's jacket on his ass was pretty hilarious. He was ripping up fan signs in the front row. When we got back to the action, they're dueling shoulder blocks. MJF was constantly sticking it to the crowd, giving him middle fingers, which I thought was great. At one point, he bit Jericho's fingers, which, again, the biting, reoccurring theme in this pay-per-view. MJF went for a moonsault off the second rope and onto the outside, which was very strange. I don't know that I like that, to be honest. MJF took a powerbomb on the ring apron, which started basically him favoring the back. He hit a sit-out powerbomb off the top rope later and screamed in pain because of his back. What would end up happening towards the end is MJF would get the 3 count on Jericho. Jericho would get his foot on the bottom rope. Now, I know what they were going for here. I haven't gone and watched this back, but the way it looked, if I go back and watch this and put it in slow-mo, I'm pretty sure the ref, Aubrey Edwards, hit 3 before Jericho actually got his foot up on the rope. So, in my opinion, MJF won this match right there. Another ref would come out, tell Aubrey Edwards what ended up happening. She would restart the match. Jericho would eventually get MJF in the walls and get the tap-out victory. I'm pretty happy that Jericho's not going to be on commentary full-time. This past Rampage wasn't terrible, but his commentary a couple of years ago on Dynamite wasn't that bad. The stuff he's been doing on Rampage lately, just screaming, is god-awful and annoying. It was toned down quite a bit this past Rampage. I'm guessing he may have seen the criticism online. Maybe he listened to it back and didn't like it himself. Who knows? Next up was Punk and Darby Allin, which, number one, this was the main event of the show. And number two, I felt bad for any of the matches after this. It didn't quite have the... So WrestleMania 18, I believe it was, Rock versus Hogan, that crowd got on their feet, and it seemed like never sat down, and never shut up throughout the entire match. This wasn't quite that crazy. It wasn't on that level. But the crowd went absolutely nuts for this match. And I knew going into this, if this match wasn't last, there was going to be crowd exhaustion. Now, we'll get into the end later. What ended up happening at the end, I understand why they didn't put this last. The stuff at the end, I might have actually waited until even this Wednesday on Dynamite to maybe do what they did, just for the sake of keeping the crowd into the pay-per-view. Big pop for Punk, as we would expect. We got holy shit chants before these two even touched each other. Match started out with a collar and elbow tie-up, which I thought was really cool and kind of the theme of the match. This was more old school. There was some high-flying stuff and some brutal stuff, as with all Darby matches. It was a little slow for a Darby match, but all things being fair, Punk has not been back in a very long time, almost 8 years. This was his first match back. I did notice his face turning red a little bit. Obviously, he's going to need a few matches to get back into ring shape, but he didn't embarrass himself. It wasn't terrible. And I enjoyed it. It reminded me of matches back in the 80s and 90s where submission holds were more common and they focused on picking apart body parts. We get these matches now where it's just move after move after move with no consequence or context of what they're really trying to do. There was some brutal spots. At one point, Darby would end up getting pitched into the corner, and instead of just taking a corner bump, he went through the top and middle turnbuckles and hit his back on the steel post. That was absolutely goddamn insane. While me and my girlfriend and a friend were watching the pay-per-view, I even made a comment that I think maybe Jeff Hardy or Shawn Michaels needs to sit this kid down, have a conversation with him, and tell him why he shouldn't be doing this every single night. This kid's... I love Darby Allin, and as far as the high flyers and taking risks, he does it better than anyone, and he lays his stuff in. But if he keeps doing this every time he's on TV, he's going to end up in a wheelchair, and I don't want to see that. So there was the turnbuckle spot. Early on, Punk went for a GTS, which Darby was really quick to counter that. There were a lot of minor submission holds, back stretches, chokes, sleepers, that kind of thing. It was kind of explained on commentary. It was more of a psychology thing with Punk trying to slow Darby down. I thought that was really well done on commentary to make that comment. Punk would hit the first GTS of the match, and Darby went backwards, fell on the floor. Throwback to Money in the Bank 2011, in my opinion. Darby barely beat the count back in. Darby Allin hit a brutal suicide dive onto Punk on the outside of the ring. He then would scale the turnbuckle back up while Punk was still outside, hit a senton on him. Later, when Darby went for the coffin drop, Punk just kind of sat up and started laughing. Punk went for the GTS. Darby countered into the Last Supper pin, but only got a 2. Punk hit a leg lariat. Darby tried for something that involved him getting on top of Punk's shoulders, and Punk would hit the GTS for the victory. It doesn't sound super fantastic, me just sitting here and explaining it, but there's 2 matches I would recommend you go out of your way to see this. If you haven't seen the pay-per-view and you're looking for recommendations, go check out the Punk and Darby match and go check out the steel cage match with the Young Bucks and the Lucha Brothers. One point I will make with the cage match with the Lucha Bros and Young Bucks that I forgot to mention earlier, the match did feel a little bit long. I feel like they should have shaved like 6 or 7 minutes. Young Bucks matches have this weird way of outstaying their welcome. If you felt the same way, you know what I'm talking about. But it was still a great match. Sting would come out after the match, shake Punk's hand. Punk helped Darby up, shook his hand. This was fucking fantastic. Next up was a match that actually, until this point, after the pay-per-view started, I completely forgot it was even on the card. Paul White, a.k.a. The Big Show, versus QT Marshall. White did all of his signature stuff, the chops, before the match started, the two guys that came out with QT, he tossed over the top rope. What can I say? White did the shushing chest slaps. He hit his choke slam, got the 3. What I pretty much expected to happen. Main event time. Kenny Omega versus Christian. This match wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but again, this match was hindered by an exhausted crowd. If you were to compare this match with the match on Rampage where Christian won the championship, they were actually fairly similar, but I would probably pick the Rampage match just based on the way the crowd was. One didn't necessarily outshine the other as far as the in-ring stuff goes, though. If I was Tony Khan, I would have... Well, you know what? I'll get into that stuff later. Right out of the gate, Omega would attempt a V-trigger. They traded offense. Omega pulled a table out, put it over Christian. Omega jumped off the apron and double stomped the table. Match kind of dragged until Christian was sent chest first into the corner. Again, if this match was on earlier, it probably wouldn't have felt like it was dragging so much. Eventually, the Good Brothers would come out, interfere. Omega would accidentally hit Gallows. Christian hit a kill switch, got a very near fall. Don Callis came into the match. Christian basically walked towards him and ran him off. At this point, Omega was positioned up on the top turnbuckle. Christian would go up there and end up getting caught. Omega would hit a one-wing angel off of the top rope for the 3. Now, the aftermath. The Young Bucks came out, which honestly sort of annoyed me. These guys have this habit of doing shit like this, but the Young Bucks came out and they were selling their injuries. To their credit, they looked like they'd been through a war. If I was Tony Khan, I would have just probably kept him off television for the next week or 2. Gallows started beating down Christian. The Jurassic Express would come out, but they'd get shut down pretty fast because there was like 5 or 6 of the Elite out there. Fans started chanting yes, which if you've been listening to the podcast or reading the online rumors, you understand why. Omega started bragging, claiming that he was the best, that no one in the company was in his league or could beat him. Lights went out. Music started. Lights came back up. We heard something that was somewhat akin to the Undisputed Era theme from WWE. And Adam Cole walked down the aisle. Cole got in the ring and stared a hole in the Elite and then turned around and kicked Jungle Boy. Obviously, we got hugs. We got that spot from Ring of Honor where the Young Bucks kiss Adam Cole on the cheeks. I was a little disappointed to see this with the way that they kicked him out of the Bullet Club and he exited Ring of Honor. I think that there's a great story to be told there, especially when Hangman Page comes back. The Dark Order appears to be in the middle of falling apart, which except for the stuff with Brody Lee, I've never been a huge Dark Order fan, but Adam Page, when he comes back, if the Dark Order's done, he'll have no allies. Adam Cole could be his ally in a fight against the Elite. That's not where this appears to be going. Adam Cole could always end up being a stooge, I guess, and turning on the Elite. Omega got back on the mic, did some more bragging, and made this is a happy ending comment. Music hit, and Bryan Danielson is all elite. Came out, started brawling. Christian, Jurassic Express, and Danielson would fight the Elite off and stand tall as we went off the air. I am super stoked to see Bryan in All Elite, or being All Elite, excuse me. I keep fucking shit up. God damn, I feel retarded today. I've been having issues with recording these podcasts these last couple days. But it is great to see Bryan Danielson in All Elite Wrestling. One little criticism I have, the music he came out to, the beginning was reminiscent of the Flight of the Valkyries, and then it just goes into this like generic beat thing. Maybe they were trying to get the rights to the Final Countdown, and at the last minute they couldn't get it. I would encourage Tony Khan, if he can't get the rights to that, just go out and pay someone to record a very similar version of Flight of the Valkyrie to his more recent WWE theme with the guitars and it being heavier. Just do something like that. A Flight of the Valkyrie is actually an old classical piece. It's, if it ever was copyrighted, it might be older than copyright. If it ever was copyrighted, it's in the public domain and has been for a long time by now, I'm sure. So they would have no trouble. All they would have to do, they wouldn't be able to use the actual audio from the WWE one. They wouldn't be able to take that track, but they could take the music and record their own, I don't even want to say version. They could take what WWE did note for note, arrangement for arrangement, and because it's in the public domain, and actually you can actually copyright a sound, so it is a non-issue as long as they don't use the version that WWE actually had made. So that did it for the pay-per-view. Again, my major criticism was the Punk and Darby match not going on last. After watching the pay-per-view all the way to the end, I understand why they did it. In an ideal world, the Danielson and Cole debuts would have been saved for that New York show in 2 or 3 weeks. Both would have gotten a better response, I believe. When Cole came out, he would have gotten a raging response. And since it's New York, when he joins the Elite, if they'd done it there, I don't know if he would have got booed or not. And then the roof would have came off the place when Bryan came out. The crowd reacted to both. Again, exhaustion. The pay-per-view ran fairly long. The last time I remember checking the time before the pay-per-view ended, it was about 8:30. Main card started at 5, so it was probably, I'd have to check, it was probably near 4 hours by the time it was done. Between that and the Punk match sucking the audience dry, they were only going to get, I'm sure they garnered the maximum response that the crowd could have given them. Anyway, that is your recap and my thoughts on the AEW All Out 2021 pay-per-view. I thought this was really good on the whole. Pre-show match was kind of meh. The Casino Battle Royal, it was okay. It did what it was supposed to do, which is get Ruby Soho a title match. The Punk and Darby match and the Tag Team Steel Cage match were both great. I was going to say I probably enjoyed the Punk match more, but honestly, there's no denying that the Cage match was the best match of the night. I actually might Might have enjoyed that a little bit more. I don't know. I'd have to think about that. Women's title match was really great. The Moxley and Satoshi match, it wasn't life-changing, but it was decent. There wasn't any stinkers on this card. If there was one, I guess you could give it to the pre-show match, but that's more of a personal opinion thing. I'm not big on huge multi-man matches like that. They always break down into chaos. Anyway, that's been your AEW 2021 review. Follow me on Twitter at capital F, capital D, pod. Go ahead and look up the Facebook page, Fallout from Dishonor Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram. If you have any questions or comments about the show, feel free to email me at falloutfromdishonor@yahoo.com. Again, I would like some audience engagement. As a reminder, I have an interview already recorded with an independent wrestler named The Wrestling Nerd. You want a shot at the Samoa Joe trading card with the signature on it? Get on that video when it drops. Leave a question for the podcast. It can be about the interview. It could be about All Out. It can be about upcoming matches you might look forward to. It can be about shit that happened 15 years ago, as long as it's wrestling based and not trolling or trying to insult me. Then you'll get entered. Anyway, thank you for listening.